Hey everyone, I'm rather incoherent. The Festival of Legends and the Core Set rotation are just on the horizon, they're about to happen, but before they do, let's talk about Warrior, what they're getting, what they're losing, not that they have much to lose, and how I expect their meta decks, they don't have any meta decks to change. The format is that I'm supposed to say how their meta decks change, but they don't really have any. But we'll talk about how I see Warrior doing in the coming meta. And I'm sad to say that I've saved the worst for last. Not the worst in terms of the current state of their cards, the worst in terms of what the hell is this, Blizzard? Now, I wasn't around for Rosticon's Rumble, but from what I hear, this card was printed years ago in Rosticon's Rumble, and it was better, because instead of giving you a minion of each minion type in your hand, it was just all dragons, and all dragons is much better than one of each tribe, since by the definition of a Menagerie deck, you might just draw a bunch of the same tribe and only copy 1-2 minions instead of like 3 or 4. Also, very importantly, the old Voon saw no play, and this one is worse in a much stronger comparative game. Like, this could be a 3-mana 4/3 with a rush, and I would be calling it suboptimal. Anyway, the new archetype for Warrior's Menagerie. Every expansion, we're going to print a new archetype for Warrior, support it just enough that you know it exists, but nowhere near enough for it to be viable, and then abandon it. Appears to have been the trend of the past couple years that I haven't been playing the game. Because from what I hear, Warrior's been dead for a very long time, and cards like Black Rock and Roll are not helping it. I don't think anyone's out there claiming that Lorthamar Theron is a crazy neutral legendary that they put in all their decks and that defines the metagame. Black Rock and Roll is a 5-mana Lorthamar Theron that doesn't come with the body. It's a fire spell, I guess. And I mean, it doesn't just double their stats, it gives them health and attack equal to their mana cost. So like, that could be better or worse. Presumably, if you're putting this in your deck, it's better. But I just like have questions. Why doesn't it draw a minion after it goes off? Why doesn't it cost less mana? Why doesn't it affect the cards in your hand? Because like, if you are gonna build around this, then you have made a combo deck. And if you draw the minions that need to be doubled before Black Rock and Roll, the deck just doesn't work. Is that what I'm getting? Everything about this sucks. It could be improved in virtually every way. And I'm talking about Warrior as a whole, but I'm also talking specifically about Black Rock and Roll. It's at its most upsetting with cards like Power Slider. Because Power Slider is a 3-mana 1/2 rush, Battlecry, gain +1/+1 for each minion type you played this game. And over for Rogue, they just got like the same minion but better. Rogue got Rhyme Spinner, which is a 3-mana 1/3 rush with combo gain +1/+1 for each combo card you played this game. It's got better stats. It's easier to stack combos than minion types. Why is this objectively worse? Warrior's the armor class, so we gave him a 1-mana 1/3 that gives you more armor. It's got Quillbore for your Menagerie stuff. Isn't that nice? Except Menagerie's a mid-game deck. It doesn't need to gain more armor. It's trying to win board in the middle of the game and kill you. Gaining armor isn't what that deck is about. Additionally, if I really wanted to play a deck that was good at gaining armor in Festival of Legends, there is a 1-drop for another class that does this better. The Rift cards are terrible. This is Claw, the 1-mana classic spell for Druid that never got played. 2 mana, give your hero +2 attack this turn, gain 2 armor, finale, play your last Rift. Presumably your last Rift is the one before this. The way I first read the cards, they all just repeat themselves. But that doesn't make any sense, so it must be the one you played before this. So the first Rift gets no extra value. I'm gonna tell you now, the next Rifts are not good. If you buffed every single Rift, the Rift package would still be weak. But I think what bothers me the most about Verse Rift isn't just that it's worse than Claw, which came out forever ago and the developers may have forgotten. But once again, it's worse than a Druid card that came out in the same expansion. This just gives you more than Verse Rift. It does the exact same thing, but with either 2 more armor or 2 more attack. And it's like the worst card Druid got this expansion. But while we're on the Rift package, let's talk about Chorus Rift. 3 mana, draw a minion, give it +2/+2, finale, play your last Rift. Paladin just had a card rotate that was draw a minion, give all your minions +2/+2, and it was a 2/2 minion itself. So that puts Chorus Rift in a pretty bad light, right? So finale, play your last Rift. It's okay, you don't get the 2/2, but you get Claw. You can use that to kill a 2/2 and we'll call it even. Nice. So let's go talk about the payoff Rift, Bridge Rift. This has gotta fix everything. 6 mana, summon a 3/4 rocker with taunt and a 4/3 with rush. 6 mana 7/7. Power creeping that Boulder Fist Ogre, baby. Now, theoretically, on turn 7, you can play 2 mana Claw and get this again. So if we evaluate this as 8 mana, gain 2 armor, deal 2 damage, summon 14/14 of stats, that's actually kind of okay. But it requires you to have like bad riffs in your hand that you're just sitting on before turn 7, because you can't play them unless you're getting the bridge riff combo value. They're all terrible. And that's pretty weak. And then after you do that, all your riffs are garbage again because you'll be duplicating Claw instead of Bridge Riff. Like, duplicating Bridge Riff is a legitimately strong thing to do. But Bridge Riff itself on 6 is trash. There's so much that needs to go right for this, and there's like nothing inherently strong about it other than this one thing. And generally speaking, if a deck just made good plays turns 1 through 7, it can probably handle you suddenly playing out 14/14 in easily digestible chunks, right? 3/4s and 4/3s are not hard to deal with. It's not like you summoned a 14/14 immune to targeted spells. It's actually very easy to deal with this. So the Rift package is just hot garbage. There's a token nod to the existence of Control Warrior with the Kodo High Drum Kit, 4 mana 3/2. Death Rattle, deal 1 damage to all minions, gain armor while equipped to improve, and that's a really, really good weapon, to be honest. That's like Fiery War Axe, which is fine even at 4 mana, it's still doing relevant things, it's not good anymore. But the Death Rattle is incredible. It's basically a board clear on a stick, and your opponent has to play around it at all times. So that's very, very strong. It's just a shame it's like the only piece for Control Warrior that's in the game right now. Like, what's the other 28 cards in my Control Warrior deck, Blizzard? Because you didn't print any. The highest cost warrior card in this expansion is 6 mana Verse Riff. I'm not exactly tempted to go put this in my Control Warrior list so that I can live long enough to get Bridge Riff value. That's not gonna be the plan. Which leaves us with the last 2 pieces of the Menagerie package. We've got the Drum Soloist. 5 mana 5/5 taunt, battle cry if you control no other minions, gain +2/+2 and rush. Nothing says mid-range tempo package like if you control no other minions. Anyway, here's your token taunt card for the expansion. We're gonna pretend to support that archetype a little bit. And like realistically, the best deck you can make for Warrior right now is probably gonna be some jank-ass Menagerie taunt Warrior that just plays mid-game and sort of hopes for the best. And it's gonna be the definition of not viable. It's gonna be rough. 5 mana 7/7 is not good enough. 5 mana 7/7 with taunt and rush is alright. It's still not incredible. This is just fine. It's not bad. It's better than every other card I've talked about except for Drum Kit, which is not actually playable because its deck doesn't exist. Unlike Drum Soloist, that deck exists, it just sucks. Roaring Applause is the singular good card that Warrior got this expansion. 2 mana, draw a card, repeat for each minion type you control. In a Menagerie deck, that's pretty much guaranteed to be 2 mana Arcane Intellect, probably much better. It does not seem hard to draw 3, even 4 cards with this. This is a very strong card. But there's nothing else going on for Warrior. This is the reason the best deck for Warrior is probably Menagerie, but congratulations, you're king of the dumpster. Now, this core set rotation has generally been awesome. There have been a lot of old cards getting buffed, a lot of cards reimagined in the case of Overheal stuff. There have been a lot of new archetypes being brought in on the rotation. That's been really cool. You've had stuff like Demon Warlock and Defile re-entering for Warlock. You've had stuff like the Secrets leaving for Paladin. Maybe the rotation is where the hype's at. Maybe that's what's gonna save Warrior. They lose Armor Smith and Shield Maiden, which kinda sucks for them. I was hoping Fiery War Axe would just get buffed back to 2 mana, it would be fine, but no, it's just gone. Bloodhoof Brave is fine, like no one's playing in Rage Warrior anyway, but it's still sad to see it go. Gorehound and Darius and Bloodsail Deckhand to a lesser degree weren't really seeing play, so they lose like what little reason there was to think Control Warrior might be viable. What do they get? Oh baby, is that Armegadillo? Is that motherfucking Armegadillo here to save Warrior? I'm so sad. Bladestorm is a good card. Heavy Plate being evergreen, I like it. If you're gonna keep pretending that Taunt Warrior's a thing, Fried and Flunky seems like a good card to put in, and Sword Eater is fantastic. I don't know why you gave me Woodcutter's Axe. I don't want Woodcutter's Axe, I want Fiery War Axe back. But okay, fine, this is an acceptable cheap weapon. We also have this thing? I'm not sure why they put this back in. It's not like Mech Warrior's a thing, so oh, they need a mech available to Warrior for Menagerie, that's it. Got it. That's a 5 mana spider tank that bombs my own board? I'm not sure that's the mech they needed, man. And our Megadillo's with a taunt and a beast that's got all the synergies with all of the warrior packages. Of course it's gonna save warrior. So while I by and large agree with all the memey stuff I've been saying so far in this video, it is worth noting that I'm gonna re-record this ending bit, cause despite the fact that warrior largely got screwed this rotation, they do have enough going on for them that I don't think they're gonna be the worst class. Unlike Hunter, I actually have some optimism that warrior will be playable. Hunter feels like it does have a bunch of dissonant archetypes that don't combine together and don't really work individually. And while warrior feels the same way, I genuinely do think that Menagerie Warrior is a strong enough base to get a viable deck there. That's unfortunate because Menagerie Warrior has nothing to do with warrior's current or past identities, but I do think Menagerie Warrior will work. Also, I should mention that even though Dynamatic probably was printed to put a mech in warrior for Menagerie purposes, realistically it is alright as a control tool and it's good to have it back for that reason. But the reason that I expect Menagerie Warrior to actually be viable has a lot to do with the rotating neutral cards. There are a lot of already good neutral amalgams. In addition, we're reprinting the mech package with Zilliax and then several buffed magnetic cards, Replicating Menace, War Gear, and in particular, Bronze Gatekeeper, which at 3 mana 2/5 magnetic taunt can just be a little bit backbreaking and can be crazy high tempo in the early game. Right now, the warrior deck that I'm most optimistic about, and I do think all the warrior decks will be variants of Menagerie, because whether you're playing control or mid-range, Menagerie has the best early curve with cards like these, and then additionally it's got the best draw package with Roaring Applause, so I think that bends all decks towards it to some degree. There's one outlier that I'll talk about in a second. And specifically, I think the best version of mid-range Menagerie Warrior is going to be Big Menagerie Warrior. We're using Trench Stalker, Remornia, and Decimator Olgra to hit your opponent's face from hand after doubling their stats, hopefully, with Lorthamar Thron and Black Rock and Roll. It seems optimistic, but it's the only clear finisher available to the deck other than just outcurve them and win, and if your whole game plan is outcurve them and win, I think Menagerie Warrior is going to be much worse at that than many comparative decks. However, Menagerie Warrior's got a better curve than I would initially give it credit for, and that's because the neutral Menagerie package is really good. Pretty much every class can run most of what's in this deck, so I imagine some other decks will be trying out some Menagerie stuff, but without Roaring Applause, I really don't think anyone other than Warrior has a good enough reason to play it. But the curve's very solid, and you can actually make a better one than this. I've got a lot of endgame in this combo package, and as a result, I'm not able to run stuff like Frequency Oscillator here. I've only got a couple of 2-drops, I mean 6 is plenty for a mid-range deck, but still. And I don't have things like Gorilla Bot or Amber Whelp in this slot. I don't have things like Drum Soloist in my 5-drop. Instead, I've got a pretty good curve. I've got the best stuff in the curve that you could previously get, which is Click Clockers and Bronze Gatekeepers. I've got Weapon into Hook Fist into Weapon. So I've got the best parts of the curve and generally good minions, but not the most robust curve a Menagerie deck can get. The endgame I've taken for this, obviously it's doubling stats. It's just hitting your opponent in the face from hand with those doubled stats. But additionally, I've also got Gorlock Ravagers, which are just pretty good minions in this deck. You'll notice I run no other Murlocs, but I also run 5 Amalgams. So these Gorlock Ravagers do have 6 targets in the deck, and yeah, the second one is not going to be good. Realistically, if you play a Gorlock Ravager, it'll probably draw the other Gorlock Ravager, but it'll also draw 2 other minions that you definitely care about. And that's because every Amalgam gives a minion type to Power Slider. It counts as a new minion type on board for Roaring Applause. It's magnetic for things like Zilliax. Every minion drawn by Gorlock Ravager is going to be good. The minions that are Amalgams in this deck are pretty premium and directly associated with our game plan. But I think most of all, it just is the best draw card other than Roaring Applause we have, and we want to get all the shit in our deck, out of our deck, so that we can actually draw the things that make our deck good and make our win conditions online. The deck's curve is good enough that you'll probably have games where you can finish off with Olgra, Remornia, and Trench Stalker without actually buffing them, but the plan is definitely just to buff Trench Stalker to unreasonable numbers and steal the game from your opponent. If you play this long enough, you will invariably eventually have a game where your opponent thinks they've won. You've had a bad curve, you've gotten behind, you played Block and Rock and Roll, got further behind, you played Lorthamar Thron, and that was the nail in the coffin of your tempo. The control deck is just laughing their way to an easy win from their perspective. But if you add your mana cost to your attack, 9 plus 8 is 17. If you double that, that's 34, baby. That's just dead from hands. So there's a very strong thing this deck is built around. You'll usually get nowhere close to that, but this deck does look like it can reliably probably double up your deck and then find a way to draw something in your deck for finishing damage. It's got a bunch of big finishers, it's got a good early curve. I don't think this is going to be a top tier deck, but I could be pleasantly surprised and find out that some version of Menagerie Warrior is. Now, before I wrap up the video, I will mention there is a dumb combo deck for Warrior. You can use Tony, King of Piracy to switch your deck with your opponents. That's generally not very helpful, but then you can use the Fires as an Ashari to replace your opponent's deck with garbage. That's pretty good, but I mean, this is a card that was printed for you to use on yourself, so it's not terrible. This could actually be good for them. Which is why you also run Steam Cleaner to remove all the cards that didn't start in their deck, which is their entire deck at this point. So we have a 2-turn combo where you take your opponent's deck, replace it with garbage, they get the deck back, and then on the next turn you Steam Clean the deck out of the game. That's really neat. I like that a lot. It's a cool way to win a game, and you can build that as something that curves into it with a lot of draw up Menagerie, or you can build a slow control deck. But it doesn't matter if, like, how you build this. It absolutely doesn't matter. Here's why. If this is a viable deck, if there is a deck in Hearthstone, the way this game has been designed historically, where your whole game plan is you're going to take your opponent's deck and you're going to throw it in the dumpster, and that deck is good, that deck's going to get nerfed into oblivion, right? Realistically, that's the sort of unfun thing that Blizzard designs their game to not have. Control Warrior has died because Blizzard thought that fatigue matchups weren't fun. So if you think you can have a deck where your whole plan is to completely remove the deck your opponent made from the game, and if Blizzard's gonna be okay with that, that's ridiculous. So first of all, I don't think Control Warrior is good enough for this Tony combo to really have a top tier home in the first place. But second of all, if I'm wrong, and it does, this will get nerfed. There is no way they're okay with you steam cleaning your opponent's entire deck. I guarantee you if that came up in game testing, they were like, oh haha, that's neat, good thing it's garbage. Whether they were right or wrong, that's how they would have viewed it, or they never even noticed in deck testing that the Fires was an Ashari combo existed, because like me, they forgot Fires was an Ashari existed until Theorycraft hit. Anyways, that's it for now. I've been Rather Incoherent. Hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about Warriors. And if you did, then please like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff really does help the channel grow, and I deeply appreciate it.